Chapter 54, Ecology. So what is a community in the ecological sense? So a biological community is an assemblage, a putting together of populations of various species, and they live close enough together so that they could potentially interact. So this is a biological community. This picture down here shows animals and plants surrounding a watering hole in southern Africa, and they are members of a savanna community. And in the page of your book, Figure 54.1, how many interactions between species are occurring in this scene? And there is a caterpillar eating a leaf and parasitic wasp eggs on top of the caterpillar. So ecologists call relationships between species in a community interspecific interactions. So interspecific between species in a community. So the things that affect interspecies interactions are competition. The interaction can be detrimental to both species. Predation, herbivory, parasitism, disease, and mutualism. The interaction is beneficial to one species but detrimental to the other. However, mutualism, the interaction is beneficial to both species. And then commensalism, one species benefits from the interaction, but the other species is totally unaffected by it. Interspecific competition occurs when species compete for a resource in short supply, such as habitat space, such as food, etc. For example, weeds growing in a garden compete with garden plants for soil, nutrients, and water. Strong competition can lead to competitive exclusion. So if the competition is strong enough, there could be a local competing species. So the definition of a competitive exclusion principle is that two species competing for the same limiting resource, food, water, habitat, cannot coexist in the same place. So one will succeed, one will be excluded. Ecological niches. The total of a species' use of biotic and abiotic resources is called the species ecological niche, where the species lives. So an organism's niche is its ecological role, how it fits into an ecosystem. So similar ecological species can coexist in a community if there are one or more significant differences in the niches. So they aren't competing for the same resources. This picture shows resource partitioning among Dominican Republic lizards. So 7 species of Anolis lizards live in close proximity. They all feed on insects and other small arthropods, but competition for food is reduced because each species of lizards has a different place to live, a different preferred perch, thus occupying a very distinct ecological niche. Predation. Predation is the interaction where one species, the predator, kills and eats the other, which is the prey. They're feeding adaptations that have evolved for predators such as claws, teeth, fangs, stingers, and poisons to capture their prey. Prey exhibit defensive adaptations such as behavioral defenses such as hiding, fleeing, self-defense, and alarm calls. So animals also have morphological and physiological adaptations such as coloration and mimicry. This first one is cryptic coloration. This is a canyon tree frog. So this is an example of defensive coloration in animals. You can't see tree frog well at all, so the predators would have a hard time. This is an aposematic coloration. Animals with effective chemical defense often exhibit bright warning coloration. So this is aposematic coloration, and predators usually have gotten hurt by this, so then they are cautious in dealing with prey that display such coloration. Last one mimics the harmful green parrot snake. Sorry. See how this larvae looks a lot like the snake. So this is harmless. This is in Moulian mimicry, two or more unpalatable species resemble each other, such as the cuckoo bee and the yellow jacket. So the Bastian mimicry is probably more common. So presumably in the Mullerian mimicry, each species gains an additional advantage because the more unpalatable prey there are, the more quickly and effective predators adapt, avoiding any prey with that particular appearance. Herbivory refers to an interaction in which a herbivore eats parts of a plant or alga. It's led to an evolution of plant mechanical and chemical defenses and adaptations by herbivores. So since plants are so diverse, it's advantageous for herbivores to be able to distinguish between toxic and non-toxic plants. Many herbivorous insects have chemical sensors on their feet that enable them to distinguish between toxic and non-toxic plants, as well as between more nutritious and less nutritious plants. Some mammalian herbivores, such as goats, use their sense of smell to examine plants, rejecting some and eating others. They also might eat just a specific part of a plant, such as the flowers. In parasitism, one organism, the parasite, derives nourishment from another organism, and then its host is harmed in the process. Parasitism exerts substantial influence on population and the structure of communities. For example, moose ticks weaken their host, increasing the chance that the moose will die from cold stress or predation by wolves. Another example, parasites that live within the body of their host, such as tapeworms, are called endoparasites. Parasites that feed on the external surface of a host, such as ticks and lice, are called ectoparasites. In one particular type of parasitism, parasitoid insects, usually small wasps, lay eggs on or in living hosts, such as shown at the beginning of this chapter. The larvae then feed on the body of the host, eventually killing it. Some ecologists have estimated that at least 1/3 of all species on Earth. Disease. Effects of disease on population and communities are similar to those of parasites. Pathogens, disease-causing agents are typically bacteria, viruses, or protists. For example, West Nile virus has caused decline in the bird population on the East Coast. Mutualism between acacia trees that live in Africa and ants. So mutualistic symbiosis or mutualism is an interspecific interaction that both species benefit. The ants feed on the sugar produced from the trees, and the acacia benefits because the ants attack anything that touches the tree. So the hollow thorns of this tree house these stinging ants. So this is a case of mutualism. They both benefit. The ants feed on nectar produced by the tree and on protein-rich swellings, these orange swellings that you can see in the paragraph at the tips of leaves. Commensalism between cattle egrets and water buffalo. So in commensalism, one species benefits and the other is apparently completely unaffected. Hitchhiking species, barnacles that attach to whales. Commensal interactions are hard to document in nature because any close association of two species likely affects both. So when one is not affected, it's hard to document. So here's a picture of cattle egrets and water buffalo. So the egrets are benefited, the water buffalo are less. Species diversity of a community is the variety of organisms that make up the community. It has two components, species richness and species and relative abundance. Species richness is the total number of different species in the community, so all the different species. The abundance, relative abundance, is the proportion each species represents of the total individuals in the community. So the number of individual species in the community. So in this picture, which forest is more diverse, Community 1 or Community 2? Ecologists would say that Community 1 has greater species diversity, 25, 25, 25, and 25%, a measure that includes both species richness and relative abundance. So a community with an even species abundance is more diverse than one in which one or two species are abundant and the remainders are. Okay, these are trophic. This is a trophic structure, okay, where starting at the bottom, primary producers, consumers, consumers, consumers. And each level is magnified. So the trophic structure is the feeding relationship between organisms in a community. It's a very key factor in community dynamics. So food chains link trophic levels from producers to plants down here, terrestrial food chain, marine food chain, phytoplankton, up to the top carnivores. So it's always better to be closer to the primary producers in case there's any sort of toxins, because toxins are magnified tenfold with each level. So here are the terrestrial food chain. Primary producers, plant. The primary consumer is this grasshopper that eats the plant. The secondary consumer is this mouse that eats the grasshopper. The tertiary consumer is the snake that eats the mouse. And the quaternary consumer is the raptor, the falcon or eagle that eats the snake.